You're watching Oklahoma's News 4 at 10.
Disorder on the court. The Thunder game against Utah Jazz postponed after a player is diagnosed with COVID-19. The NBA now suspending the remainder of the season.
Incredible. And all of this developing as the president addressed the nation tonight on what the World Health Organization is now calling a pandemic. Joining us is Dylan Buckingham from our Forewarned Sports Forewarned tonight sports team. We also have Peyton Yager and Taylor Adams live downtown.
We're going to get to everyone in just a moment, but first, the president suspending travel from Europe for the next 30 days, except for the UK. Those new rules go into effect Friday at midnight. He also stressed for everybody to take extra precaution, especially older Americans.
The highest risk is for elderly population with underlying health conditions. The elderly population must be very, very careful. In particular, we are strongly advising that nursing homes for the elderly suspend all medically unnecessary visits. In general, older Americans should also avoid non-essential travel in crowded areas.
The president also saying he is taking steps to make antiviral therapy available in record time.
He did go on to say that although he says the economy is strong, he's instructing the Treasury Department to defer tax payments and called on Congress to provide Americans with immediate payroll tax relief. And we're continuing to follow the developing situation downtown at the Peak. There it is. And the NBA player who tested positive for coronavirus, our Foresight drone, as you can see live overhead.
Meanwhile, arena staff seen sanitizing team benches, and the NBA making an unprecedented decision that has never happened in the history of the league.
Dylan, what are your sources telling? This is incredible. What are your sources telling you tonight?
This is the wildest thing I've ever seen in the history of sports.
It's
I mean,
amazing.
Simply put, it's a very surreal and sobering night. Everything seemed normal heading into the Thunder game with the Jazz. The league had held a conference call earlier in the day to try and figure out a coronavirus strategy, although no decisions were made. OKC and Utah went through starting lineups, and then Chris Paul asked Jazz players what's wrong with Rudy Gobert, at which time they responded to get away from them. That's from ESPN. That's when a Thunder team doctors and officials got together for a conference. Both head coaches, Billy Donovan and Quinn Snyder, spoke to officials as well. That's when the league said they couldn't greenlight the game to tip off. Everyone went back to their locker rooms, and subsequently the NBA then decided they should postpone that game as well as the entire league. Following that, the NBA reported that Rudy Gobert tested positive for coronavirus, and the NBA then suspended indefinitely all of their play. But it's been an even more alarming night for the Thunder after the postponement. That's where we find News 4's Taylor Adams at the Peak with more.
Dylan, only a few people still lingering around the Peak tonight, but earlier fans just flooding out of the arena, not knowing why the game was postponed. But of course, we do know now that Utah Jazz player Rudy Gobert did test positive for the coronavirus. ESPN reporting tonight that both teams are still inside the Peak. They're also reporting that Gobert was never in the stadium, but was in OKC on standby to play while he awaited test results. The Athletic tonight reporting that Thunder players are being told they will all be tested for coronavirus. Chesapeake Arena officials here not giving us any word on the status of the players or the status of future events here at the Peak. However, we do know from Cher's Twitter account that she is canceling her concert here tomorrow over coronavirus concerns, tweeting that she is worried for her fans and their health. Now, as for future Thunder games, we know that the NBA is suspending all NBA games for the rest of the season. We want to continue our team coverage tonight and take you over to News 4's Peyton Yager, who's also here at the Peak. And Peyton, you spoke with fans as they were just flooding out of the arena tonight.
Right, we were down here minutes after those fans were cleared the game, some in a panic, some very confused. The news hadn't hit them yet. They didn't know what was going on. They tell me the players were rushed off the court, and then they were kind of in a lingering phase, not knowing what was going on. Some of them were booing, they needed information, and then an announcer came overhead and said, "You're safe, but we need you to leave." Imagine hearing that, some again in a panic. And then we caught up with those fans as they were heading to their cars. Here's a reaction.
Someone sprinted out on the floor and they were like, World War Z, and ran them back into the locker room. And I was like, it's just dumb. It's just silly.
It's a virus. It's just like the flu. It's another virus that's out there. They have to learn how to contain it properly. And
I guess I'd rather be safe than sorry, you know. But I am very upset because we were so excited.
I'll let y'all know you. You came all the way here.
Yeah.
but it is what it is. Can't do nothing else about it. So we live and go on.
The Oklahoma State Department of Health just tweeting, telling attendees at today's Thunder game that they are not at risk of catching coronavirus. But some told me they're not going to go to work tomorrow and take a precaution. It was a very strange event here tonight at the Peak. Live at the Peak, Peyton Yager, Oklahoma's News 4.
Thank you, Peyton. Also, this just in, Oklahoma City University joining the list of colleges canceling classes after spring break. Instead, in-person classes will be replaced with online instruction for at least 2 weeks following spring break.
And another huge event for our city that brings thousands of people in here. Officials with the Oklahoma City Memorial Marathon sending us a statement earlier saying this, quote, "We are monitoring the developments of the COVID-19 very closely, along with so many others who are holding large public events and are working closely with city county health officials and emergency management. We will continue to monitor the situation and make any announcements on our website, social media, and local media." And of course, we'll let you know too. And as you heard earlier, some top celebrities are canceling their Oklahoma shows. As you heard, Cher, she was supposed to perform tomorrow night at the Peak. She tweeted an apology a short time ago saying, "I'm sorry, but your health is paramount." She added she isn't afraid, but she had to go with her gut, she said.
Also just announced, comedian Adam Sandler has canceled his show at the WinStar. That's in Thackerville. He was supposed to be there on the 21st. Also, another startling announcement, Oscar award-winning actor Tom Hanks and his wife Rita Wilson both confirming they have tested positive for coronavirus. In a Twitter post, he describes their symptoms as being similar to a cold with some body aches. Hanks says they both have slight fevers and Wilson is experiencing intermittent chills. He says the couple will stay isolated as long as public health and safety requires. Both Hanks and Wilson are 63 years old.
Now, first weather from the Forewarned Storm Team.
And in our weather world, it was another warm day with light winds across the state. There were some clouds up above, but it didn't keep temperatures down. The clouds are still there, and temps are very slow to fall right now. There's a live look from Rose State, Oklahoma City, right in the center part of your screen. It was a gorgeous sunset out there. Look at temperatures now, still holding on to the middle 60s, 65 in Oklahoma City. Dallas, Fort Worth, 88 degrees, now 74. A lot of that air, that warm air moving into the state tomorrow. So a very warm day is on the way. And then we have a huge pattern change to talk about. It's an area of low pressure off the west coast, and this means round after round of system bringing lots of rain and even the threat of severe weather to our state when that arrives. Coming up.
Thank you, Aaron. New information on a story News 4 told you about last night at 10. An Oklahoma police chief accused of harassing and hurling homophobic and religious slurs to not only local business owners, but also allegedly officers within his own department. And tonight we're hearing from that police chief for the first time as the ACLU steps in to investigate. News 4's Austin Breasette joins us live with more. Austin.
Well, Joleen, we're told the ACLU and Freedom of Oklahoma are coming together to release joint statements regarding this situation, and we'll have an update on that as soon as that comes out. But now we're getting insight into the other side of the story.
Silent no more, speaking out, calling the harassment allegations against him shocking. Chief David Hansen calling Justin and Todd Holliday close family friends, adding that he is, quote, not homophobic. You'll remember News 4 showing you pages of text messages sent by Hansen to Holliday, some so bad we're not able to show you on TV. But Hansen claiming these messages are, quote, cordial off-color texts and that the Hollidays participated in the banter.
Our whole lives we were called names. Justin and I both, and we shouldn't have to put up with it anymore.
But they're not the only ones. Chief Hansen's own police officer, Lieutenant Michael Burnett, also speaking out against him.
Being berated is a daily abuse. I mean, it's gotten to the point where none of us want to come to work.
The police chief saying he could not comment on Burnett's remarks, citing, quote, personnel issues. We tracked down a formal complaint filed with the city manager, Steve Saxon, just last week. He says they are aware of the complaints against the chief and that he wants to, quote, assure the public all concerns will be adequately addressed.
Enough is enough.
Chief Hansen has even garnered some support. A woman named Marie Mejia reaching out to News 4 on Facebook Messenger. She knows the chief, saying, quote, he's not like what's being said, and that if the chief does something, the behavior is returned. Continuing that he spent time with her and her kids, even picking up her child to go eat. Now with the situation brought to the light, Holliday and Burnett say they have fears of retaliation.
I'm afraid we're going to have a target on our back.
It'd be working under a microscope for the next 4 years.
Well, the situation in Seminole has made the city council call a special meeting that's set for Friday at noon, and the one item being an executive session to discuss this issue.
Next in weather.
A roller coaster ride of temperatures, lots of rain, and yes, severe weather coming to the Sooner State. The next week of weather is coming up.
All right, Aaron, and we're continuing to follow the developing situation involving NBA players reportedly still being quarantined inside the Chesapeake Energy Arena. There you see our Foresight drone live overhead right now.
The quarantine comes after a Jazz player tested positive for coronavirus. More team coverage coming up later in sports.
Now, sports with Dylan Buckingham.
Today has been one of the most unreal, sobering, and unprecedented day in the history of sports. The NBA has suspended play across the league after Rudy Gobert has tested positive for coronavirus. The Thunder and Jazz both went through their pregame routines before officials met to get the game green-lighted to tip off. ESPN reports that Jazz players told Chris Paul to stay away from them. That because Rudy Gobert had tested positive for the coronavirus. That forced not only a postponement for that game, but the whole league has suspended play. ESPN reports that Gobert was never at the arena. Now both the Thunder and Jazz are still quarantined at the arena and being tested for coronavirus, that per The Athletic. The Utah Jazz released a statement tonight saying a preliminary positive result came back right before tip-off of the Thunder Jazz game. We're working closely with the CDC, Oklahoma, and Utah State officials in the NBA to determine how to best move forward as we gather more information. That individual is currently in the care of health officials in Oklahoma City. The virus is impacting college basketball in a big way. Brian Brinkley has that from Kansas City.
There won't be many fans entering the Sprint Center starting on Thursday for the rest of the Big 12 men's basketball tournament. The Big 12 Conference followed the NCAA's lead with the national tournament in restricting access. Only 125 tickets per team will be allowed. Basically, just friends and family allowed to watch the rest of the Big 12 men's and women's basketball tournaments. The Big 12 commissioner talked at a news conference today, and we talked to our state's Bedlam women's coaches about playing before an empty arena at Municipal Auditorium on Thursday at 6.
I think it's the best tournament of its kind in the country, and so I'm very sorry to disrupt what I know is a much anticipated weekend for a lot of people.
I know our Big 12 authorities and the people in charge are doing what they feel is best for the best interests of our student athletes.
It's a really strange situation, and I wish I had something better to say about it, but I'm still just kind of trying to wrap my head around it.
Oklahoma State got play started in the Big 12 men's tournament against Iowa State. And in a game which featured 18 lead changes, the Cowboys took a 2-point lead to halftime. Cameron McGriff got back-to-back dunks late in the first half. He finished with 17 points. But the Cyclones went on a 15-2 run to start the second half and led most of the rest of the half. They regained the lead when Terrence Lewis got the slam with 8 seconds to go. But OSU immediately rushed up court with no timeouts left, and Isaac Likely got the layup. He was a force for the Cowboys in the second half, finishing with 21 points, and OSU won it 72-71. Now they'll face the top seed and Big 12 champion Kansas in front of a near-empty arena at the Sprint Center on Thursday at 2.
They got the Player of the Year, a Hall of Fame coach, and probably if their Player of the Year wasn't Player of the Year, their point guard would have been Player of the Year. So we got a lot. We got a big task ahead of us, no matter how many people are actually in the stands tomorrow.
Oklahoma's men's basketball team left the arena before all of this happened in terms of what the Big 12 decided to do for the rest of the week, so we haven't heard from OU head coach Lon Kruger. The Sooners will take on West Virginia Thursday night at about 8:30 in the last of the 4 quarterfinals. In Kansas City, I'm Brian Brinkley, Oklahoma's News 4 Sports.